Howdy y'all, today I'm going to be talking about the vitality of ethanol as a biofuel. So a little bit about ethanol. It is a renewable energy source and it's mainly used in car fuel but can also be used in animal feed and other things. And it's made from extracting sugars from common plants like corn, barley, sorghum, and even sugarcane and sugar beets. Some people have tried to experiment with things like grass and trees and tried to extract sugars from that, but there hasn't been a ton of research in that area and not a lot of progress. And then Brazil and the US are two of the biggest consumers of ethanol. So you might be wondering, how is the biological source cultivated? The main one used for extracting sugars is corn, and this is usually planted in the spring, and it takes a little bit to grow, long process of photosynthesis, but it is eventually harvested in the fall, where it is taken on trucks to go and produce ethanol. So how exactly is it produced? There's two ways it's produced. One is through dry milling and one is through wet milling. Dry milling is more for making car fuel, and that is a process of taking grain from its storage, and it goes through processes of cooking and fermentation. And fermentation is that anaerobic cellular respiration, so it doesn't use oxygen. And then it is dehydrated and denatured, and then finally put on the market into our cars. In wet milling, it's kind of a similar process. The corn is processed and then dried and then eventually made into animal feed and things we feed our livestock with. And then the developmental status of ethanol is that it is widely available pretty much everywhere. In 2022, actually 15.4 billion gallons of ethanol were produced in the US, which is pretty insane. And then on this little graph right here, I have some numbers of how much ethanol is produced in the top 5 ethanol producing states in the US, which is really amazing. And there have been some ups and downs with the prices, but generally ethanol is really good for the economy. Then we have the impact of ethanol on the carbon footprint. It's pretty significant, but numbers have been coming down. Most of it is because of transportation and production, and there's just not a ton you can do about that right now, but production of ethanol is 46% lower than that of gasoline, making it a better alternative. And then combustion emissions are also close to zero, which makes it a better alternative. And even some electric vehicles produce more carbon than that of ethanol if they're not done correctly, which is kind of interesting. And then next, we have the economic impact of ethanol. Like I said, it is really good for the economy. Around 72,400 jobs alone were supplied just through the ethanol business, and also contributed billions of dollars to household income and GDP. And like I said, there are ways that they're trying to make it safer for the environment, since the carbon footprint is kind of an issue. So more jobs will continue to arise as they continue to increase the renewable and good parts of ethanol. And then how is it seen by the public? Some people are pretty cynical about it just because of the carbon emissions, and that isn't the greatest for our environment, but a lot of research has been done and a lot has been implemented to make ethanol a cleaner source of biofuel. And so support continues to grow for that. There is the threat of electric vehicles, but we're not anywhere close to being fully electric, so there's still more time to just continue to increase ethanol. And then some next steps, just a plan of action on how we should approach ethanol from now on. Obviously, there's still a lot of research that needs to be done with ethanol, but with what we know right now, ethanol could be an awesome alternative to gasoline, making it a really cool transition between gasoline to electric vehicles. So once we are electric vehicles, or we have that little in-between time where we can use a better source for our fuel. And besides car fuel, ethanol also has a ton of other uses, so even if we stop using it for that, it is still extremely useful to our economy and our society. And obviously there's more research being done to decrease carbon emissions, but I think the best plan of action is just to continue to do research and to continue to supporting the good name of ethanol. And then here are my sources, and thank you so much.